you can afford to make a $5, $10, $5,000, $10,000 mistake. Start making them and make 10 of them before you make that next hire that's really going to start to unlock some of your capacity.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Growth and Scaling Podcast. I am so excited today because I got a fellow motorcycle aficionado on the show today. Matt, will you please tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, Todd, great to be with you, man. So I have spent most of my career in the education space. Started out as a middle school teacher, moved here to New Orleans where I've been since 2006. And
Nice.
when I moved here, I started working on motorcycles in my garage. I started building electric motorcycles. We can talk a little bit more about that. But 25 years in education, most of that spent helping folks start their own education technology or even physical in real life learning spaces and tools for families, kids, teachers, parents. And then the last 16 years, my night hobby, I call it night shift bikes, has been building electric motorcycles. And I can tell you a little bit more about my most recent projects, but yeah, in a nutshell, I'm an educator who builds electric motorcycles in his spare time.
Well, I love that you made a business out of it. We will get into that, but you know, I think the excitement here is going to be tell us about how you grew into this education marketplace, because I think a lot of people, especially those who are startup founders, oftentimes they are the type that didn't actually love school or their education or anything like that. They want to kind of do their own thing. How did you develop a model that worked within the confines of that space? I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I did not come up with that. I think it was me making a bunch of mistakes. I'll give you an example. In 2010, I launched an incubator for education entrepreneurs called 4.0 Schools. And,
Love it.
I had this very overdeveloped sense of certainty and very poorly placed sense of knowing what the heck everybody needed if they wanted to start a school. So I started this fellowship, and we had a really amazing team of people helping folks start their own type of K-12 charter school. And
Cool.
I really thought I knew everything about this particular business. I had spent a lot of time helping people start schools, had been involved in more than a couple hundred charter school startups at the time.
Right.
But, I think, Todd, what I realized was the first or second cohort of that group, I had folks come to me and say, hey, I don't really want to start a school. I want to start something that's more tied to my passion, and it doesn't fit in the box that we think schools are shaped as, right? So it might be a after-school program, or it might be something in a classroom. It might be a piece of software. It might be a one-on-one coaching mechanism. And I had to really let go of I build schools, and that was hard for me. And it was only because I had some really courageous, incredibly confident colleagues who said, listen, Matt, the future here is not in the box of school. It is outside that box. And I had to let go of that. That was hard for me to let go of because I took a lot of pride in being a school guy.
How funny.
And, even my inner teacher was like, you're here in school. I'm going to be a great teacher in that box.
This is
literally,
blasphemy.
right? What other profession
Blasphemy.
do we put our professionals in boxes? So
Right.
yeah, it was hard to let go. But honestly, the thing that cut me loose from that were people who I respected as teachers asking for freedom from that box. And then we literally tore apart our entire fellowship and rebuilt it around that customer, someone who said, I don't want to build a school. Can you still help me? And we found a way to help them.
Interesting. So you're saying that a lot of your clients and a lot of people in your cohorts were actually educators who didn't mind being in the box. They just want to do what they did a little bit differently.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I think, what we became known for and are still known for in the education world is we're going to be the group you can come to with this really crazy idea that you may not have even told someone about. But we're going to create a safe space where you can share that idea. We will give you feedback on that idea, but we will have a very precise goal. We will want you to simplify that idea down to something that you could execute in less than 2 weeks with less than $1,000 with real people. And so, a lot of folks would come like, I have this amazing idea of a perfect school that like everyone leaves and gets their job or their favorite school, college acceptance letter. And, it took a lot of work to be patient with those customers and say, as founders, those entrepreneur customers, and say, I want you to squeeze that idea down into an hour. What would the ideal hour experiment with 3 to 5 kids or families look like? We will give you everything you possibly need, the money, the coaching, the resources, the travel budget to do that. And so, cool. For me, that was like an amazing opportunity to say, we are the one-stop shop. You just have to be able to distill your product down to that MVP. If you can do that, we will do everything we can to help you.
So help me understand this then. So you basically, it's not just, so yes, you have solutions for full school box systems. Like if you want to do a full charter system, charter school, but you also have these elements where you're like, hey, a lot of people are already in a charter, or they could get release time from school and run one of these courses. How do you get them accredited? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, that just depends on the city or the state. Most charter school laws have a pretty detailed information about how you need to get accredited. And the process is, you go through a couple of years of applying and essentially trying out with the district.
Right.
And then you get 5 years to prove yourself. And if you don't,
cool.
someone else can get that right. But yeah, we definitely had to work with partners on the ground. But what, I think the real unlock for scaling, to answer that question, Todd, was when we stopped trying to do this at our staff level. And we said, what, we've got, even when it was only about 25 people, we said, we've got an alumni network of 2, 3, 4 people in that state. Let's have them coach our folks. And that, Todd, was like, of all the scaling hacks or like, eye openers for me in the last 25 years of work, it was when I decided to let the alumni of my fellowship program do the work that I thought I was only equipped to do. And, that took some humility and a reality of, realizing like, I just can't do everything. And I suck at a lot of these things. But the alumni are there on the ground. They know what it is. They relate to the person coming through that program in a way that I can't. Because I'm not doing the hard work, And so who's the person most proximate to them? The person who's 6 months ahead of them. And that's how we answered that question, Todd. Was like over and over again. It was like, what alumni do we know near that person? Let's get, and we started paying them money to do that coaching. And then it kind of snowballed from there.
I can't imagine any teacher wanting to have another source of revenue.
No, right. Why would you want that? Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool.
That was when I sort of knew this was changing. We had, there were about 5 people on staff, and we needed we had about 10 at the time. We were going to add 3 or 4 people, but instead of hiring those people, we hired 150 of our alumni on 1099 contracts worth a few $1,000s. And you're exactly right. A lot of those people who were teaching, that was serious money for them. And it was something they're real passionate about, and they're coaching someone that needed their help.
And I'm guessing that they probably ended up implementing a lot of the people that they mentored, their programs into their programs. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And then it's suddenly like, what I'm looking for a school, and then that's the sort of where you let go as the corporate entity, and you say and it's kind of like what you're doing with growth and scaling is like, my job is to curate the community. I don't, decisions don't come through me. Those moments, those serendipitous moments, that's the whole point, is to get out of the way.
I love it.
And I think it's so much of the scaling is just like, grab it and just like force it, and like opening up your palm and saying like, my job is to let this happen. Yeah. It's really cool when you see that starting to spin without you.
I love it. No, I totally know what you mean. And I remember the first time I launched, I had a business that kind of went beyond me, and it was so fascinating to see that, hey, I've got another guy that could do what I thought only I could do. Yeah. And that is an enlivening feeling to know that you're not the only one that can do the thing that you thought the only you could do. Yeah,
for sure. No. And it's like, this is like, you asked me to think about some of these like things that I feel are really important for scaling. And the one that has continued to bubble up for me is succession planning. And I think it's so important to talk about because as founders, we usually get preached to that it's all on us. And the reality is that like I am a flawed human being. I have a lot of blind spots. There's a lot of stuff I suck at. And it is not healthy to treat myself as if I can do more than I'm able. And yet so much of the lexicon in founder and entrepreneurship world is you got to do everything. And of course that's true. The grind is real. But I find it very liberating, right? Day one, I am in this for one chapter. It's like a book, right? Like I'm going to write this chapter and I need to prepare the ending of my chapter for the person who's going to write the next chapter of this long book. And it seems silly and simple, but time and time again, when I have my successor in mind, whether they're on my team, I've got a group of people that I'm grooming and thinking about like helping prepare that. I sort of, I'm just a better decider and I'm a calmer leader.
Well, and it helps you focus and realize where your real strengths are and not where you think your strengths are. Yeah. Because, I think a lot of founders make that mistake and even operators, I've met a lot of people on the podcast who were not the founders, but they're the operators of the business. And they're typically smarter than the founders because they recognize I'm really good at delegating. I'm really good at controlling a lot of things. I can handle lots of moving pieces, but I'm not really the one you want to call on to fix a specific problem in the business.
Yep.
I'm going to run everything, make everything work right. And what you're talking about in succession planning can be taken a couple different ways. And I want to help you. I want to have you clarify a little bit because, succession planning can be interpreted as who am I handing my business off to when I exit? And it's also can be taken as who do I hand off these responsibilities that I don't want to do anymore to? Yeah. Which part of that are you talking about? And help us understand how you kind of accomplish that in this business.
It's a great question. I do think the acknowledging of I'm not an operator. I am a start. I love starting. I struggle I struggle with operating. Yeah. And the way we thought about succession at 4.0, my successor, Hassan, who now runs the organization, one thing we did is I took a 5-month sabbatical and I let him run the day-to-day for those 5 months so that he could feel, the rhythm. He had been in multiple roles in the team and knew the business well and was a 2-time alum of our program.
This is great because I think I need a 5-month sabbatical. So
it was great for everyone. And we made that part of, we tried to invest in everyone having a significant chunk of time away to just be charged when they could. But we thought of this story of 4.0 exists to dent the universe, right? That what is this? The vision statement level of the organization is future state of the world that does not exist now. For us, it was, we wanted to move capital into the hands of people who normally never got a shot at it and at a stage far earlier than anyone ever gave anyone money ever in the education and entrepreneurship world. And so that was our vision. And when we thought about, so one spectrum to continue is, does Hassan have the same conviction about that vision, but maybe a different set of experiences and background to take, say like if we're thinking about compass headings, he's coming at it from the Northeast and I'm coming at it from the South or the West. That's a really incredible endowment to the vision is now we've kind of got stereo vision on the future state of the world. And I want to find someone who can complement my vision is not coming at it from the exact same compass heading. And 100%. Then I think the second element is back to this idea of the alumni, there was a fundamental operational objective, and that was summed up in how much of the business that staff are responsible for can we put in the hands of our alumni. And so by the time I left as CEO, we had about 25% of the P&L going through our alumni in those 150 to 200 1099 contracts. So it started with what you originally asked, which was coaching and guidance. Then it became recruiting. Then it became making the decisions on who is in the fellowship. And so, what Hassan picked up is the end of my chapter was we got it to that state. And now he has, a set of really interesting questions that he can't answer yet that are going to push us to the edge. How far can we go? Can we get 60% of the P&L in the hands of our alumni? What starts to crack? And as you think about a curator of a community, like what needs to be centralized in a curation and like keeping the community healthy, but what can be pushed out? And so that there's a sort of vision connection, and then there's the execution where it makes sense that my chapter is ending because Hassan has a unique perspective that we want to experiment with. And so we've got some capital that he can spend, and he has actually a pretty precise idea of where he's going to push the business model next. Does that make sense?
I love it. Hey there, friends. Todd Westra here. I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode, but I also want to take just a few seconds to let you know about a project that we've been putting together for the last several months, and we're finally launching it, called the Captain's Council. You see, as a CEO or operator of a business, it can feel like you get stuck in your own head a lot of the time. You get challenges that you don't know how to resolve. You get people causing problems in your leadership team that you don't know how to resolve. And it's so hard to overcome those things by yourself. You don't have to anymore. Join the Captain's Council. Captain's Council is a group of other CEOs and operators and owners of businesses where we come together once a month for several hours to discuss the biggest challenges you're facing. You express to the council of 8 to 10 people about what's going on. Where do you feel stuck? And these other people are in the same boat as you. They're running and operating their own businesses. They're your peers. They help you kind of dissect what's happening and help you see things that you may not have seen all by yourself. If you don't have a good, strong network of people around you, come join the Captain's Council. This is going to be something that will change the way you run your business and open your eyes to opportunities that you have never seen without the help of your peer group. Come check it out, captainscouncil.com. No, it totally makes sense. And I absolutely love the way you describe that, because too often I think a lot of people listening to the show think that they've got to live and die with the business. Like, this business is not you. It sometimes is an extension of you, but what you've done is you've given birth to a whole new entity that you're kind of parenting through a stage where you feel comfortable. And when you're not comfortable parenting anymore, guess what? It's not a sin to like put it in the hands of someone else who's really good at that toddler stage or that teenage stage or whatever it is you're dealing with the business. Yeah. Because let's face it, there's a lot of guys like you, a lot of guys like me. I absolutely love building product for businesses. I could come up with new products and new ideas and new ways to hone in on client avatars all day long. I bet. But then actually executing, sometimes that's not my favorite part of it. I like to delegate that. And so what advice do you have for people who are just, when they think about their business, they think it can't run without them. They think that there's just no way I'm not going to be the CEO of my own company. How do you get over that?
It's an awesome question. We keep coming back. This all boils down to the things that I learned when I was an 8th grade math teacher. And my technique for breaking these things down, especially when we're dealing with our own leadership, is we divide the problem by 10 until we get to a place where we can run an experimental version on it. Back to what I said about the pilot, in 10 days. So for example, let's say that you're struggling with outsourcing. I would argue that you need to go through the list of tasks and pick a task that you could outsource for $1,000 in less than 2 weeks. And, so often when we're scaling, we get to,
like that.
Companies, they don't scale. We tend to think of hockey sticks and, pitch book decks and like, oh, that's not the way companies ever scale. They scale in step functions, right? Either that step function is a hire or it's a new business line that we open, but we want to always be right. So typically what happens is we struggle with when we get to the edge of the step where the step goes up, we don't know how to go up. And this because we haven't broken it down. And so visually what you want to do, instead of having big steps, you want to do like beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, like that. Right. And that actually, I guarantee you in 5 or 10 minutes with most founders, if I just got talking about the business, we could find something that you could outsource to someone you trust, right? For 5 or 10 grand a $5 or $10. It doesn't matter where your P&L is right now. But if you get into that habit, you start to break through that, that sort of monolith of founder does everything. You can afford to make a $5, $10, $5,000, $10,000 mistake. Start making them, and make 10 of them before you make that next hire that's really going to start to unlock some of your capacity.
I love that advice. And I love the analogy. I love your mathematical equation in this whole thing too. I mean, dive into that a little bit more, because I noticed on your website and several of your sites, you've got little formulas in your product names. And I was curious where that was coming from. Now I kind of have a better feel for that. How do you think about your products? And when you're launching a new thing, or when you're trying to push a new initiative, how do you think about that? What is your step in your own head of execution on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I do feel like the thing I learned, and I didn't come up with this, I think this was something we learned from the founders. 1,500 founders have gone through the 4.0 community. They serve 9 million kids now. It's incredibly diverse. More than 70% of those founders identify as people of color. More than 60% identify as women. And so, that incredibly diverse community has taught me that this universal concept of stop thinking about the business, right? Like when you boil it down to that 30-minute experience, all you can do is focus on the user experience, right? Like, did that human being come into the 30 minutes with one expectation, and did they walk out changed? And, a lot of the case studies that we published and still use in the 4.0 community are based on this idea that, like, in 30 minutes, I can change your identity. I'll give you a really clear example. There's a really great community of young women who are aspiring to be engineers called Electric Girls. And when Flor Serna started that community, she said, I wish I could go grab it because I have some in my toolbox, but she said, my pop-up will be about young women, typically teenage or preteen girls, perception of themselves as scientists. And I'm going to change their perception in 30 minutes by teaching them how to use a wire stripper. So I'm going to teach them how to cut and strip wire, and I'm going to run a simple circuit building exercise. And it's not just about, oh, neat, the light turned on. What Flor said is like, I am going to teach them a skill that they will have for the rest of their life, and it will show them the possibility, and it will change their identity. They will see themselves as scientists and as builders and as experimenters, and they will have enough confidence. So, it actually takes quite a bit of skill to build in that 30-minute experience. But like, Todd, I can tell, like, your inner product designer, like, that's what you probably love about it too, is that you want to create an experience for a human to feel different at the end of it.
You want to solve a problem.
Yes.
You want to solve a problem. You want to make it feel like they just did something amazing. And that's all part of the hero journey that a lot of founders forget. A lot of operators forget, once they start generating revenue, that their business was designed around solving a problem.
Yes.
And what you've done is you've been able to successfully implement and execute the problem, and just helping people recognize, hey, schools kind of suck sometimes, and school districts kind of suck sometimes. How do we get around that? How do we build something that will change the lives of our children in a way that's positive and not so overbearingly whatever the city council wants to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's because we don't put children at the center. And it's what I do when I overcomplicate products, or I processize my business, is I forget about the humans involved. Like, the whole point of building businesses is, as you said, solve human problems. And, I think that's like, my next electric is my most recent project, the one I'm going to, pitch you on. And it's the idea here is, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was signed in August of last year, gives homeowners up to $18,000 in credits and rebates to start electrifying their life, their vehicles, their appliances, making their homes more weather tight. And, I came into that with this like way too complicated version of it. I was like, look at all these things and let me help you start electrifying everything. And then I had to slow down and realize I threw everything out. And I was like, you know what? I just have to start with the first thing. And so we rebranded, And it's just about your very next thing, my next electric.
Cool.
And I'm just trying to put a brand, it's like, I don't even trust myself as a solo founder right now. And so in some ways the brand keeps me a little disciplined because I'm like, keep reminding myself, oh, right, I'm just helping someone get their next electric, fill in the blank.
That's awesome.
And we'll solve the long game over the long term.
Right.
My job is to be present with each person in my community, and we're going to help you just make that very next step. And at the core, like that's kind of what as company builders we do.
At the core, that is what every company owner and operator should be thinking all the time. What is my next step to bring my client through? And what about what I do with my existing clients? What I do with my prospects? You got to be thinking, what is their next step, and make it as easy for them to see that as possible. That's where you really start to grow and scale.
Yeah, totally.
Dude, Matt, this has been a fascinating conversation. Totally love it. How in your journey in building this over the last 25 years, I mean, to be truthful, most educators don't think like you think. And I know you've seen this because you've had so many alumni now at this point that you know how they think. I've got close family members that are educators, and they're definitely not on the same wavelength I'm on when it comes to building and growing a business. But who is it in your life who has been kind of that pillar, that maybe that mentor who's guided you through this journey, and now you've become an expert at it?
Yeah.
Is there somebody you want to give a shout out to?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I just want to shout out my friends and your family members who teach every day. I think we all get into that work because at the core, we do want to, create that experience for our students and have them see something they didn't see before about themselves. Right. And yet the work you have to do, a colleague of mine used to say, I have to fight every day to fight the fight. Like the fight of helping children learn is a fight. It's hard. There's so much working against you, but you got to fight a whole nother fight against the system just to get to fight that fight, and,
no kidding,
and so I have immense respect for anyone in the classroom or near it or who has ever been in it. But, my answer to your question about inspiration is a fellow motorcycle nerd, my boss at the Olympic Committee. I was one of the first 10 people on staff at the Olympic Committee in Atlanta, 1996 Olympics. And I got assigned to this random dude I'd never met before because I spoke Spanish, and we were in Barcelona on the advanced team. The best job in the world is working for an Olympic committee host committee, and then go to the Olympics free.
Get
4 years
wine
ahead.
And dine on everything possible there.
I had a badge that said, "Oh, for observer." Like my literal job was go watch the Olympics. Like greatest job ever.
Crap, that really sucks. Yeah.
What do you do today? I got to go observe some stuff. So, but I spoke Spanish, and I had a pass that let me get in a lot of the parking lots. And so I was assigned to him as his driver, translator. And we built a friendship that is still to this day very tight. I'm going to go see him in 3 weeks, right after I do my dirt bike trip with my friends that you and I are talking about. AD was a COO, and here's why I love him so much and why he is such a close friend, because he's wired like you and I are. He is a builder. He is a builder of businesses, but I got to watch him in the chief operating officer role. It was constraining and challenging for him, but he found a way to operate and execute. And I have a lot of respect for people who, at the core are founders, which AD is, but he really showed me how to operate, and I'm grateful to him for that. So he was bilingual in the language of executing and founding, and that's very rare. So I'm grateful for him. Yeah.
And who is AD who?
AD Frazier Jr.
AD Frazier.
He was the chief operating officer of the Atlanta Olympics, went on to run a bunch of other businesses after that. And I'm going to get to eat dinner with him in a couple weeks.
Oh, have so much fun with that. That's a great shout out. And I love the story. I love the backstory. That's fascinating. Barcelona, I was just there this spring. What a beautiful city. Beautiful part of the country. What
a place.
Cool. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time being here. For those listening, go follow what he's up to. I mean, Matt has got on his personal branded site, which we'll put in the show notes here. You got to click on it and see what he's been busy doing, because it's kind of fun. It's fun to see inside of the mind after you've talked to him and see what he's put on this site, because he's a tinkerer. He's got all sorts of cool projects he's working on. He's got an amazing success rate with what he's done in the education space. What a fun founder. What a great mind. And we appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Todd, thank you, man. Your community, a lot of respect. I know how hard it is to build one that is so vibrant. So shout out to you, and thanks for the invite. It's been an absolute delight.
Hey, appreciate it. We'll catch you later. And for those listening, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you. I hope you love that show. That is someone I would love to go catch up with and ride some motorcycles with. I love his journey. I love what he's done. I love what he's doing. For those of you out there on your own growth journey, listen to your clients. Listen to what your passions are. Listen to what your family wants you to be involved in. Lots of voices shouting at you when you try to explore what you could do with your business, and listen to the feedback as well. One of the things I respected most about Matt's interview is the fact that he may be the founder of that business and ran it, but he wasn't too prideful to notice he's not awesome at running and operating a growing business with hundreds of employees. He brought somebody else in that was, and it happened to be a client, an alumni of his program. I think that is one of the coolest things about this story. I think it's just an amazing part of the story. So for those of you who are involved in founding a business, think about the people on your team that could be better operators than you. Could the business go further with somebody else's leadership? Could the business make better decisions with someone else's leadership? These are things you should be thinking about all the time, and really be mindful of your succession strategy, your exit strategy. At what point are you wanting to leave the business? These are all things you should be thinking about. Our community talks about this all the time. In our Captain's Council, we have got founders talking and operators talking about their succession stories. They talk about what they did to smoothly transition and then take the business to the next level after their partners had left. And it is just fascinating. I love hearing these kinds of stories. So thanks for being part of our community. As a listener of the Growth and Scaling podcast, we invite you to learn more about the Captain's Council just by clicking the links below. We look forward to seeing you in there, and we thank you for being a part of our podcast. Thank you so much, and let us know what we can do to add more value to your journey on your growth and scaling of your business. Thanks so much.